Hello, my name is Jacob Kashiwagi. I am a senior researcher for the Performance-Based Studies Research Group, and I will be presenting the paper, The Application of the Best Value Approach in Purchasing Card Services. This research was started and initiated by a state government in the U.S. It was experiencing some issues, and some of the issues you can see on the screen. It was finding that as they were trying to procure services, they weren't able to attract as many bidders as they wanted. Not only that, is oftentimes when they would try to award a project, they would get protests from the different vendors. And of course, it would take them a very long time to develop requirements to procure the service with. And so they were trying to find a system that could make this more efficient and could attract more vendors that were high performing to bid on their services. And so they saw, the head procurement person saw one of the Performance-Based Studies Research Group's presentations, saw what we were doing, and wanted to test the best value approach on a service for their state. And you can see the performance of the best value approach on the screen. Now, one of the main things with the best value approach from the traditional models that most states and governments use is shown on the industry structure, where you have perceived competition on the x-axis and performance on the y. So everyone wants high competition, so we're looking at the right-hand side of the chart. But many are stuck in the price-based quadrant, which the difference between the price-based and the best value, the higher performing quadrant, is that in the lower quadrant, the client manages, directs, and controls. How this works is the client usually creates a minimum standards or a requirement for a project. Of course, these are technical and complex, and since the client is not an expert in all their services, it's a little confusing. And so as they go out, the belief is, as long as you can meet this minimum standard, all the vendors are the same. And so the usual traditional procurement process cannot differentiate between vendors. They believe they're all the same. They believe all of their people are the same. Hence, because the client is telling the vendor what to do, and all the vendors can assumingly understand what the client wants, all you have to do is look for the lowest cost. And so this is usually how things work. The best value approach changes this to make the client utilize the expertise of the expert vendor instead. Hence, instead of trying to think all the vendors are the same, we're going to find out which vendor is the highest performing, differentiate which ones can do the project and how well they can do it, and then allow them to take the project over and tell us what to do. The big changes with the best value approach is, one, it simplifies. So it eliminates the technical information and requires everyone to talk in simplistic performance metrics. It minimizes the effort of both the client and also the vendors. It minimizes the decision-making of the client because it requires the vendors to make those decisions. And it requires the vendors to differentiate themselves. So when you look at the state's traditional process versus the best value approach process, you can kind of see the difference in terms of how long it takes to develop the RFP. It's much shorter. The time for the vendor to submit their proposals are very much shorter because it doesn't require the vendors to turn in as much information. The proposals are shorter, it allows the evaluation to be quicker and less effort on the client. And then of course, the vendor contract, instead of a negotiation, it's one where the vendor is actually clarifying and laying out a plan so the client can understand what they will do. So let's go into the test project. The project requirement was for a purchasing card. Every state has credit cards that they use to purchase things and to buy things off of, and so they need to hire a bank to help them out with this. Fortunately for these type of services, the bank actually pays a rebate to the customer for letting them be able to do the service for them. And so the main objective was the state wanted a very high rebate where the bank was giving them back money. They listed exactly what was currently happening and how big their state government was that was using the purchasing cards. And then they went through the best value approach. And you can see in this approach, they go through a preparation, which is developing the RFP, a selection, which is basically telling the vendors, look, without using technical information, turn in these requirements and differentiate yourselves with performance metrics in terms of your expertise, how you're going to minimize risk, your value, and then, of course, your project manager that can show us exactly what their performance is and how they're going to do this in a very simple manner. And then, of course, the price. While we went through this process, actually, one of the vendors identified in the interview how they never bid on this RFP before, but they decided to do it now because it seemed that this new process was right along the ways that this company dealt with their clients in how they wanted to deliver services, which was a very good information for the client to know. This is how it worked. The top matrix is the raw scores. Everyone got a 1 to 10 rating on each of their documents. The rebate got a score in terms of their points. And then they normalized it and they times it by the weighting of each. And this is how you get their different scores. As you can see, the first two vendors were very close. But when they looked at it, one vendor, be it Bank of America, gave them a much better rebate. And they had perfect scores in their performance. And so it was no decision for them. They brought them in. And the selection conclusion was that there was a high-level competition. They had the most vendors bid on the service that they ever had. They prioritized a very high-performing vendor, and it was a unanimous decision from the client to bring them in. Here are the final results that you can see. The time to procure was actually half of what it usually takes. The rebate amount was almost double, and they had 6 bidders compared to the previous time of 1 bidder. And everything was tracked and documented, which was amazing to the state. The state actually went and recommended this process to other entities within the state as well. And that was a service that they found. They found out that in doing a more best value approach type of project delivery model, that they could deliver quicker, they could procure a vendor that was higher performing and could get more money back to the state. If you have any questions, I will be around. Thank you so much. You have a great day.